Hello, welcome to MVD Apologetics. The title of this video is Incompetence is Not Compliance. I was initially introduced to this concept by Jordan Peterson. I used to follow him closely maybe 3-4 years ago, especially on his works in psychology. I have a few of his books behind me, as you may be able to see. Right there. Yeah, cool. But the actual concept I'm discussing today was more initially associated with Carl Jung, and Jordan Peterson was just more vocal about it in the recent era. Now, in essence, this concept is if you are unable to create violence, you're not peaceful, you're simply just weak. And the reason for this is because peace is not defined by the lack of the ability to cause harm or to create harm or to be harmful, but it is defined by the restraint of that ability to be harmful. So if you don't have the ability to be harmful, you cannot be peaceful. And I'm not saying that, we should action violence. All I'm saying is that peace and weakness, they're not found in the same room. In other words, and I think this is an analogy that might sort of hit the concept home for you guys. If you don't have enough money in your account to buy pizza and your card declines, what you cannot then say is, oh, look at me, I'm so healthy, I'm sticking to my diet, look at my willpower, I'm so disciplined. And you cannot say, I chose not to buy pizza. You didn't choose to not buy pizza, you just couldn't afford it. So your words mean nothing if you say you're healthy because you couldn't afford to buy pizza. And the same way, if you cannot afford to cause violence, if you cannot afford to cause harm, then your compliance, your peacefulness, your self-control, your gentleness mean nothing. Now, why do I think this concept is important? And I may be coming at this concept from the angle towards parents, as in parents who are raising children, because that's where a lot of this development will occur. But it may also apply to you, as it applies for me. I believe that the next generation of Christian men, they're being raised to interpret weakness as peacefulness. And I believe the next generation of Christian women, they're being raised to interpret men who are actually weak and harmless as somehow being peaceful and being or having self-control and being gentle, when that is not the case at all. And this is going to go bad in many ways in the future. And first, generally, if your children are weak, they're going to be extremely vulnerable to people who are malicious and they're seeking to exploit and manipulate them. That's not great. But the way I want to emphasize that this is horrible is, well, this is not great if you have these Christian men and Christian women interpreting weakness as peacefulness, is because some of these young men who are weak, and they may be raised in a household where weakness is interpreted as some form of self-control or gentleness or peacefulness, and if they're under that impression that their weakness is some form of self-control, and the day that they get power, and look, weak people, they'll get power. They have times at which they get power where they can choose to use it honorably or they can choose to abuse it. But the time that these weak men, they get in power, very likely than not, they're like toddlers running around with scissors. They wouldn't know how to use it, and they can be harmful to themselves and they can be harmful to each other. And that's where you get cases of, let's say, domestic violence and people who lash out in emotions and even physically. Not necessarily because they grew up violent, but because they grew up under the false assumption that they had self-control. And when that self-control that wasn't there is actually tested, everything crumbles. Now, obviously, I'm not saying all domestic violence cases are built up of people who were under an impression that they had some form of self-control. There are generally people out there who have the ability to create violence and to create harm, and they actively do not have self-control. And these people are dangerous. But that's not the concept. That's not what the concept is describing here. So I'm just putting that aside so you guys don't misunderstand me. Now, I want to emphasize, obviously, to parents, don't interpret the weakness of your children as some sort of self-control. You need to ask the hard questions. Do these people have any good self-control, or are they simply just incapable of harm? And the solution, from the parents' angle, you need to raise your sons to be strong, to have the ability to cause harm, and the emphasis here is ability, to be violent, and then learn to regulate it. And you also need to raise your daughters in a similar fashion, but more importantly for the daughters, I believe, is teach them to recognize when someone is weak and trying to exploit them, teaching them how to sniff out when someone is malicious and trying to manipulate them. Because I'm pretty sure that, at least in my experience, I hear many testimonies of women who face people trying to manipulate them more than men, generally speaking. I don't know about this, if this distribution is accurate or not. But either way, both your children, they need to be strengthened. And then once your sons and daughters, they're raised with these skills, first what happens is that people looking to exploit them, they stay far away. They keep their distance because they know that your children are strong and can defend themselves from manipulation and exploitation. And the next good thing is that when your children are eventually trusted with greater power, they will be reliable. They will be trusted to handle that power. They're less likely to abuse that power to hurt vulnerable people. And the ability to hurt vulnerable people, that's what weak people do. That's not what strong people do. That's what weak people do. Now, looking at the state of the world and of spiritual warfare that the next generation of Christians are being born into, it's simple to say that we need stronger sons and daughters. We don't need weaker sons and daughters. We need stronger sons and daughters who are capable of peace, who are capable of gentleness and self-control, but more stronger emphasis on their ability to be strong, on their ability to protect, to provide, on their ability to defend, especially the truth. Now, these are the kinds of people who make difference in history, and these are the kinds of people who make a difference for the kingdom of God. So I conclude, don't confuse harmlessness for virtue. Train your kids to be physically strong, to learn to rationalize and think dangerously, to be strong spiritually, and to be strong decision makers and to make wise decisions. And the reason for this is because the world doesn't need any more harmless Christians. Satan, the devil, he loves harmless Christians. For example, why would Satan worry about a Christian? Why would he attack a Christian whose peak of their faith is simply mumbling lyrics at Sunday, or, speeding through prayer like it's a chore? Satan doesn't worry about these kinds of Christians. He worries about Christians who are threats to him. He worries about Christians who are threats to sin, who are threats to the evil that runs rampage in the world. And each and every one of you, followers of Christ, you have a duty to train yourself to become a threat to the evil in this world, and to raise your children to become threats to evil in this world. Keep in mind that, especially for yourself, but also especially for your children, the world doesn't need harmless Christians. It needs strong warriors for Christ. Anyways, this is MVD, Crucified with Christ. Like and follow. Ciao.